Mr. Quigley votes yes. Ms. Chu? Mr. Deutsch?
No.
Mr. Deutsch votes no. Ms. Sanchez?
So
Mr.
that's what
Polis?
we're so worried
Aye.
about, because
Mr. Polis
we don't
votes
want
aye.
them to be able to block sites whenever they want.
Okay, I'm getting my card set up.
Oh, look, someone voted aye. That's.
Ooh.
By the way, we can put.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania,
What is it?
gentleman
Mr.
from
Marino votes
Virginia,
no. Mr. Goodlatte votes no.
gentleman from Virginia,
Mr. Forbes votes no.
There was
gentleman
one
from
that.
New York. Mr. Nadler.
Mr. Nadler votes
We
no.
have an amendment not accepted. There's one for us.
The gentleman from Texas,
Urge
Mr.
required.
Gomert.
There's another one.
Mr. Gomert votes yes.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Anything. It can be YouTube, Facebook.
That
anything.
is correct.
Alright, I got this thing recording.
Yeah,
It's Polis,
see, that's
it's
what
number
we said.
16 on the roster. It's Polis
So
number
this
80.
is pornography was just part of it, and they called pornography a copyright infringement, which made me laugh because
Because,
it's not a copyright
no,
infringement.
porn is totally a copyright infringement. That makes a lot of sense, right? Fucking government
Gentleman
makes
from
no sense
California,
anymore.
Sanchez.
No. Ms. Sanchez votes
They don't
no.
know what they're talking about. They don't.
That's what I've been saying. They don't know what
There
the
was-
hell they're talking
there was
about.
one
Gentleman
guy,
from
and
Ohio.
that's why on the SOPA bingo
Mr.
thing,
Jordan
if you
votes
open
yes.
it up, it says nerds required.
Are there other members
because
who
one
wish
of
to be
the
recorded?
members was like, okay, you
gentleman
guys,
from
we
Iowa.
need nerds to come in
Mr.
here
King votes
because
no.
none of you have the slightest idea of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've run into that a
Clerk
little
will-
earlier. The whole IP address versus
the clerk will suspend.
domain name
Yeah,
thing. Completely don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Gentleman from Arkansas.
I've already almost got bingo. Speaker tries to cover
Mr.
lack
Griffin
of
votes
internet
yes.
knowledge. I got that too.
Clerk will report.
Oh, speaker called out on bullshit. There you go.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 9 members voted aye, 18 members voted nay.
Majority having voted against the amendment is not
Oh, the
agreed
chairman is
to.
incredibly dismissive of the speaker.
Are there other amendments?
Yeah,
The
there's been a
gentleman
lot of
from
that
Colorado
too.
is recognized.
Again, I have an amendment at the desk, just the order that they're there.
The clerk will report Polis number
There was
202.
another lady. Right after the guy said we need nerds to come in here, this one lady in like the very far corner was like, "Who cares? Just vote."
Just do it.
Amendment to the
Square.
amendment in the nature of a
Because,
substitute to HR 3261, offered by
there's no
Jared
hope.
Polis of Colorado.
This is like
Page 20.
Out of
Nobody
objection, the amendment will be considered as read and the
gets
gentleman is
this.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This deals with the sections relating to the enforcement of
speaker is
orders
confused with theft
on
infringement.
page 20.
There we go.
Replacing lines
There's
14
pornography.
to 19. Again, to ensure compliance with orders issued under this section, the Attorney General may bring an action for injunctive relief. And then the language that is
expert
replaced is
advice
against any entity
dismissed.
served
There
under
you
paragraph
go,
1 that
another one.
knowingly and willfully fails to comply with requirements to compel such an entity to comply with such requirements. We say relief against any entity that knowingly and willfully fails to comply with the requirements of this section to compel them to do it again. I think it's language that improves the overall bill, is consistent with the goal. We
This guy's a
also
moron.
impact on page 22.
just babbling.
The we
he
eliminate
doesn't-
the language
just
from line 1
blah, 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 blah,
through
blah, blah.
23 regarding the product or services marketed for the circumvention or bypassing
In
of a
short,
measure.
it's just
This
I
again
have no idea what I'm talking
applies
about. But vote
to
for the school, you guys. Vote now.
Yeah.
anonymizers, Tor, other things that can be used to
Because just throw
access
Tor
sites
onto the
beyond
pile.
government censors.
Because you totally know what that is, right?
Product
Know what
that
Tor does?
Ms.
Do
Lofgren
what?
has mentioned have made possible the Arab Spring that is are critical to maintain free speech here and across the world, and preventing the product
What do you mean I can't lower the
from
volume?
being
I can
that is
only
designed
mute
or
it.
marketed that can be used even if incidentally as a
If
tool
you're-
for
I
infringement
like
of
this one.
property
Internet
is
analogy
not a
confuses
productive
house further.
direction. Any
Yeah.
technology can
I
be
noticed
used
that one
in
too.
good or bad ways.
And I've
Talking
noticed that
about
a few times when I
telephone,
started watching
you
it.
could have a nice conversation with somebody.
They were just
you can
completely
also plot a crime with somebody
confuzzled
over a telephone.
about some things.
Tor, a
Particularly
web
IP
anonymizer,
addresses,
can be
the
used to
domain name,
learn the
and
true
this
story
Tor
of
shit
Tiananmen
that
Square if
this
you
guy's
happen to
just
live in
traveling off
China
about.
and the government otherwise doesn't allow you to access that story, and in fact only
he's
shows
bringing up
happy,
China.
smiling people. When you look up the term Tiananmen Square, it allows you to get to the real story. And yes, of course, they have other uses as well, which are less honorable. But what this would do is make it clear that we are not going to be seeking to eliminate products or services designed or marketed that can be used to prevent access to these services. These are, again, typically products that can avoid government censors, that enable the Internet to remain a bastion of free speech.
Really hating it. Like,
when they are used wrongly, again, the correct answer is to go after the offenders, criminally where possible, civilly where possible, working with other jurisdictions where possible, and working together on a domestic solution that makes sense.
You can talk about him. He has his voice chat on. He just
again, I think with the importance of many of these enabling technologies to free speech, and that's why this bill is opposed not only by ACLU but by a whole host of human rights organizations that see the danger of actually preventing the incentive and eliminating technologies that allow individuals here and abroad from getting around government or corporate censors. And that's why I offer this amendment, and I hope that the committee will choose to include this in the final bill to ensure that that unintended consequence, because I don't think that was the desire of anybody on this panel, to further potentially restrict speech in those areas that have onerous restrictions. But I think that this provides an opportunity to ensure that, in fact, that is not the case with this bill. I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Polis, and I'll recognize myself in opposition to the amendment. The gentleman's amendment strikes the inclusion of anti-circumvention devices from the bill. It would allow devices to be developed and distributed in the United States that would circumvent judicial orders to block access to foreign infringing websites. The manager's amendment significantly narrows the scope of this provision. It ensures that only entities that design or market such a product or service for the purpose of circumventing the law can be enjoined. This is an important part of the bill.
Whittle the rest of it away. Nobody wants it.
But also ensure that we retain strong anti-piracy provisions,
ignorant.
protect American jobs, and we want to deter foreign criminals who steal American intellectual property. For these reasons,
NDAA.
The amendment. Yield back the
I'll go take a look at it.
National Defense Act of America. It gives the military the ability to detain anybody accused of terrorism without a trial.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
The woman from California is recognized.
Oh my God!
And
what the hell
they called peaceful protests
I'd like
act of terrorism.
It's very easy, and I think the members are getting
they're
tired.
pretty much
a lot
using
of
the
members have
Constitution
left,
as toilet paper.
No.
Okay.
They're stepping all over the Constitution.
That the amendment offered by Mr.
What is this country coming to?
Is not just an elimination.
No, it's ridiculous.
It's refining the section of the bill.
And just a few months ago,
I think that
government
even though it's
this
late
one got
and
vetoed,
everybody,
but they
I'm
tried
sure,
to
is
pass a
tired,
bill that would give the government
we
the
need to
ability
have an answer
to prosecute someone. So, like, let's say
the human rights
I'm accused of committing
that I
a murder,
raised with
and
my
I'm found
amendment,
innocent, and I'm innocent.
that
I
by
didn't commit it. The government can say,
Mr.
no, we
Pauls
think you're
is
guilty,
raising
and
against
sentence me back to
his.
my sentence, even if the jury or the judge decides
whether or
I'm
not we have
guilty.
this in the bill, likely there will be people.
Isn't there something about that in the
code.
Constitution?
You can't outlaw.
Do they read this shit?
Even if we might want to do so.
Know.
But to narrow the provision of the bill, as Mr. Paulis has suggested,
I saw something, but I already got that on my bingo card.
I think strikes a balance that should be supported by all of us. In fact, I don't think we can tell the rest of the world, the individuals who are living in oppressive regimes, that we're going to outlaw the tools that they need to be free people. And if you want to take a look at where's the innovation happening in the world in terms of internet coding, it's still the U.S. I'm not sure that would continue to be the truth.
She flat out told them, she said to the community, once
the
government gets a taste of the internet, they're just going to keep taking and taking and taking. And she said,
and I'm sure it's
why
not the
should we give
intent.
them
I'm
the
not
power
suggesting
to
it is
control
the
the internet?
intent. But the result will
be
be further oppression of individuals in repressive regimes. That's just a foregone conclusion. So I would urge the chairman to rethink his opposition to this narrowly drawn amendment.
This is hilarious
for the sake
because
of those who are living in regimes that care so little about human rights. And with that, I would yield to the gentlelady from Apex.
I'd like to add to that comment, and specifically,
someone yields their own
I
time.
thank the gentlelady for yielding. I hold in my hand a letter from the Secretary of State to the Chairman of the
I don't know.
member of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
The committee makes no sense.
October 25th, that specifically speaks to the Arab Spring and indicated that the State Department in particular was committed to advancing both Internet freedom and the protection and enforcement of intellectual property. We must hold governments accountable to the international commitments and obligations taken with respect to freedom of expression, which apply equally to online activity. Given the volume of communication over the Internet today, we have focused our efforts on ensuring
I'm going to take whatever images you send me. That's going to be what the video feed will be.
In this letter, as we have been saying,
what, you're going to put the images with the voice, or
there
what?
Should be no exclusivity.
All right, well, in that case, I have a few more.
Against piracy
cool.
and the freedom of expression in the First Amendment, which I think the gentleman's
there was a couple really funny ones.
The letter goes on to say the Arab Spring shows that the promise of the Internet as a medium by which peaceful demonstrators can mobilize citizens in the face of government oppression is valuable. And the Internet also offers tremendous opportunity for creators and inventors. But that
this
promise
is like legitimately what they've been doing
will not
right
be
here.
met unless the rules of copyright and trademark are protected and enforced,
happened?
which we are all saying. They go hand in hand. The rule of law is essential to both Internet freedom and protection of intellectual property rights. I think that is what the gentleman's amendment captures, and this is a letter that I ask unanimous consent to submit into the record from the Secretary of State that understands what we are saying.
Exactly
Internet
what they've
freedom
been doing
this
entire day.
I would yield the balance of my time to Mr.
Thank you. And in determining whether we need a vote on this one, I believe the chairman specified that he would work with Ms. Lofgren on this related issue. So I'm not wedded to my language. And again, I just wanted to reiterate, I believe the chairman expressed that he would be working with Ms. Lofgren on this issue of making sure that there is global free speech. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Not entirely sure what Internet means. Click, you guys.
I'm sorry, would the gentleman repeat the last?
Okay, I believe in a previous discussion with Ms. Lofgren, you expressed a desire to work towards
this is
resolving this.
It's been going on for the past 2 days,
language.
I think.
Again, just wanted to
reiterate
that
was
a discussion.
I just got him like a few hours ago.
We'll work with him, of course we will.
It's towards the tail end.
I just can't make any guarantees.
And right now they're getting spammed by phone calls and emails from the public saying, "Don't pass this, or we will destroy you."
There might potentially be later an amendment if we
and for good reason, because
we would like to work with you.
Bill,
I'm happy to withdraw the amendment.
Okay, I appreciate the gentleman withdrawing it. We'll work on it between now and tomorrow.
The wording in this bill just completely
destroy
the Internet that we have built up for the past, say, 20 years.
Now, the gentleman from Wisconsin is not present right now, so we will go to the gentlewoman from California if she wants to offer.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question, please, procedurally? Yes. You mentioned tomorrow, and we have some dim hope that it will be here.
Here's this one.
Could we just ask in terms of planning our night, what was your intention?
I kind of laughed when
been asked
when
two
I saw this.
frequent questions: how late we're going tonight, and whether dinner is going to be provided. And the answer is late and yes. And I'll welcome the gentleman to come over to the offices on the majority side. He is welcome to partake of 3 different kinds of pizza.
Health food.
We provided pizza for your side, I understand as well. But you're still welcome to come over.
I appreciate that.
This is the guy who says we need nerds.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from New York, yes.
Are you providing 3 types of pizza for the minority, too? Yes.
The answer is yes.
I appreciate the...
You guys want some vegetables with that?
Well, pizza is a vegetable. Haven't heard about that yet?
Mistake there.
You know that they spend pizza's a vegetable.
California wish to offer an amendment.
It's a fruit.
I do, Mr. Chairman. The amendment's at the desk. It's 19 on the roster, Lofgren 58.
And the clerk
Oh,
will
they called
report Lochner
ketchup
number
a
58.
vegetable too, and I was like, but it's made from a fruit. It's not a vegetable.
Okay, Dizzle, you and I are going to have a little discussion about the culinary meaning of fruit versus vegetable after we're done with this.
1. Internet site dedicated to the theft of U.S. property. A. In general, an internet site is an internet site dedicated to the theft of U.S. property.
Because there's no botanical
if
meaning
it is a
for the word
US-directed
vegetable.
site that has an unlimited purpose or use other than, and whose owner or operator uses the site willfully and primarily to 1. Infringe copyright under Section 501 of Title 17 United States Code. 2. Violate Section 1201 of Title 17 United States Code. Or 3. Use counterfeit marks in a manner that violates Section 34D of the Lanham Act. 15 U.S. Code 1116. B. Exclusions.
With that objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentlewoman
from California is she's been doing this for 2 days straight. That's not
Here's what the amendment
all.
does.
If it does,
it
I'm
replaces the existing definition.
I'm going to shit bricks
which would
for 5
allow
days
lawsuits under the new private
and die
action
because I
created
shit
in
so
this
many bricks.
legislation. Under this amendment, a website could be sued and cut off from payment and advertising networks if it is operated primarily and willfully to engage in acts that violate copyright and trademark laws. Now, if a website is consistently taking down infringing contents in response
here's
to
one.
complaints
Someone
by
on Reddit
right
post,
holders,
every time you hear
it should
yield,
not be
take a
condemned
shot.
as dedicated to the theft of U.S. property. As a basic principle,
luck.
this bill is about remedies. It should not expand the existing boundaries of liability
All right, so,
for
I
copyright
got
or trademark
foreign websites.
infringement. But this could be the result of the definition
Nerds required.
In the
Speakers
amendment
is confused with theft
dedicated
infringement,
to
so I'm on the
theft of
tile.
US property.
I've heard
Specifically,
speakers say
a foreign
SOPA will not
website
work.
could be sued by a private party under Section
Expert advice
103
dismissed.
for
I got
taking
bingo.
Anywhere on its site
I got bingo. I got
affirmative
bingo.
steps to foster a violation of
Yeah,
copyright or
you got all
trademark
of them.
law by other persons.
You got blackout?
Instead of limiting private lawsuits only to infringement,
I haven't been
violations
playing
of law
myself though.
actually
I haven't gotten
committed
Christmas
by the
yet. There we
website.
go, Christmas.
The manager's
Christmas.
amendment leaves the door open to aggressive
That will come
theories of
eventually,
secondary
you know.
liability.
Oh, we need
For
to get this
example,
right. I'm
a
not
court
so
might
sure.
find that a website, quote, took affirmative steps to foster
the noes
unquote,
have it.
infringement and therefore be subject to
Accepted.
mandatory termination by payment and advertising networks, even if there was no copyright or trademark violation, even if there was no infringement. Designating an entire foreign website as dedicated to theft of U.S. property and terminating all commercial links to the United States is a very aggressive remedy. It should be limited to criminal websites whose violations of the law are unambiguous. This
thank you.
definition
Thank
will
you.
capture
No one's
all
gonna
the
pass that
major
bill.
rogue foreign websites that the authors say that they are
That's what they should be focused on.
after.
If they really
The
want to
amendment,
censor that kind of stuff, focus on the sites that are clearly illegal and not just some random
will
site.
make clear that innocent
No
action
shit.
will not be the subject
But
of
everyone's
this
gonna be like, no,
draconian
no, I
enforcement
don't, I know.
scheme. You know, the
Oh, here we go.
DMCA,
This is
although it's been
hilarious.
sometimes criticized, has worked oftentimes. The existing language would sweep IP sites into its
Apparently,
scope.
people are going on Facebook there.
Websites
Like, it's,
where people are living up
This
to all
is
their
so
obligations
ridiculous
under the DMCA,
that you can't even
including
just pay
registering
attention to
a
it.
copyright agent
They need to
notice
well,
do
it's been
something
on for
else.
2
and
days.
terminate
So, I mean,
I
this is what
Yeah, that
really we
makes-
should be
makes sense, but
encouraging for foreign sites,
it's
not
a name.
discouraging.
Completely
The reasons
stupid.
that sites comply
Don't know
with
what the hell they're
DMCA,
talking about.
DMCA that might still be swept up.
This is just a waste of
The
time. We
safe
could be
harbors
focusing
are
on really
limitations
important things,
on
but
liability,
instead we've
not
got to fight for
affirmative,
computer rights
defenses, and as a
internet
result,
rights. It's
you can be completely compliant with the DMCA, and yet a qualifying plaintiff
We have
could
problems
argue that you are
elsewhere.
nevertheless still
That
technically violating
you could really be
Section
where you are
501
right
of the
now.
Copyright Act,
But
even
instead,
though
we're pushing
everything
back
you are doing
some
is perfectly
stupid
legitimate.
freaking
You know, I
internet
think that
censorship
the
bill.
oh yeah, here's the
amendment also removes the redundant recapitulation of the inducement standard.
This is basically what the lady said to the guy in response to when he said we need nerds. She basically said that in front of everyone. Everyone just kind of shot a nasty glare at her.
Possibly confuse the courts, leading them to ask what more Congress must have meant than the inducement already included
Look
in
at her.
subsection 1A.
She doesn't know what she's doing.
I think the amendment is particularly
dead on.
important because Section 103 includes a private right of action, and getting the definition narrowly and correctly drawn is crucial to defer trial lawyers from seeking, and I'm not opposed to trial lawyers. I am a member of the Trial Lawyers Association, but we do know that gotcha lawsuits are not about stopping piracy, but about harassing legitimate sites. And we have seen that, as I mentioned earlier in the discussion with Mr. Paulus, the shakedown.
Okay, and this is one of the guys who changed his opinion. He was originally for it, and then
that the shakedown
after hearing, I think it was the first day of this debate, he changed his mind.
The remedy is payment cutoff is to misunderstand the nature of the remedy. I think that it's one thing to say we're going to trust the Attorney General to always bring the right matters, but we're opening this up to
SOPA was in action. I couldn't be doing this. I could be surfing the web. This is really boring.
Definition in the act, we're going to
this is mind-numbing. It's going to turn me into a complete moron by listening to these people.
Not only should be supported, I think it's essential, and I see that my time has expired, so I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentlewoman.
Mr. Chairman.
Miss Waters told the
I'm going to recognize myself.
The group. She said that the people opposing
the bill
should waste everyone's time.
The gentlewoman's amendment seeks to significantly narrow the definition of an Internet site dedicated to theft of U.S. property and makes the bill less effective. Most in Congress want to seek meaningful solutions to stem the economic harm created by foreign rogue websites.
Put this up.
As
You
we
just saw the
developed
picture of the phone, and
drafted
then
the bill, we
this
heard
guy,
from
he just
individuals,
posted
small
another one.
businesses and various stakeholders representing different industry sectors. We work to address technical concerns, but also to ensure that we retain strong anti-piracy provisions to protect American jobs and go after foreign criminals who steal American
will
intellectual
reduce
property.
Privacy.
By requiring
That's
proof
a
that
head
an
desk.
operator willfully intended to
you know
violate
what
an
you're
intellectual
talking about.
property right, the amendment would require
It's going to like
intellectual property
privatize
owner
the
to prove
internet,
the state of
and you're
mind
saying
of the
it's
defendant,
reducing privacy.
who they likely cannot reach because they're in China or Russia or some other foreign location.
Well,
In
I got
addition,
bingo,
the
so
exclusions in the
I
amendment
win
protect
that.
pirate sites
You
that
win.
adopt a
You are the
We should take a
winner.
picture of the bingo
policy,
card too.
despite the
And
fact that
I
the
got
site
the
is
top
still
across.
engaged in intellectual property theft. So for these reasons, I oppose the amendment.
Mr. Chairman.
I will recognize the gentleman from Colorado.
Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. When we're talking about the site violating copyright and infringing and taking down the site, 99% of the time
on the
what we're going to
bright
be
side,
talking
at
about
least
here is
now,
user-generated
my YouTube
content.
account won't get shut down because it won't affect sites that end in .com or .org.
Whatever, the vast majority of the time.
It's focused now on foreign
there
websites.
is a difference when it is an offending site, in which case the proprietors of the site
So there's
are
that, but
engaged
it's
in a
still
willful act of
censorship.
copyright
I'm
infringement.
still opposed to
Versus
that. I don't want to see
creators
anyone.
of an enabling
and
technology.
what gives us the right to,
or implementers
to
of
sit
an
there
enabling
and
technology,
go,
as simple
hey,
as an
friends,
electronic bulletin
you can't
board,
look at this site.
which
No,
beyond
go
their
away.
own control
Like,
might
it just,
incidentally be
we can't
used
do that.
by
Nothing
some of,
really gives
its
us the
users,
right.
For illegal purposes.
Except
again,
these morons are trying to
all
pass
of these
a bill
platforms
that,
that I've
do
seen
just
that have
that.
been created have legitimate functions, have
For
legal
what?
uses. There is no doubt that like any technology, like the telephone and indeed like an automobile, which you can illegally drive into a building if you so choose, or illegally run over a pedestrian if you so choose.
I'm going to go choose
these
to run over a
technologies can be
pedestrian.
used,
Hold on.
for illegal
I got to go
purposes.
illegally drive.
This amendment is important.
Yeah,
because
I
what
go
it essentially
download some
does
illegal
is make sure
videos
that we are
and some
not
porn. I'll be right
going
back.
after sites that might only
I'm killing jobs
have
too,
user-generated
like
content
100
that
jobs.
infringes
No,
upon
just-
the theft of U.S. property. This is a very draconian
I'm proud of
solution.
You enjoy that porn.
That in the arsenal for the Attorney
I
General should
enjoy
only
killing
have very
jobs and-
specific incidences under which it can be used. I think Ms. Lofgren spells those out effectively. In addition to the danger of wrongfully disabling sites that have user-generated content that may be infringing, the precedence that this site sets among global nation-states and others is a very negative one. Again, by stating this ourselves with regard to foreign operated sites. We are effectively
so a lot of people are starting to lean towards the idea that there's too many Congress people at the higher level of authority that are for this, and it's going to pass
which would harm the growth of legitimate companies and legitimate technologies, no doubt all of which have uses, or most of which have uses.
Passes, I've pretty much officially declared this no longer a democracy.
As simple as email,
if NDAA passes, I'm moving to Canada.
As a video platform like
yeah,
YouTube.
so am I. Canada all the way.
These can all be used in ways that are contrary to the law, and the individuals responsible for that should be held fully accountable under the law. The answer, however, should not be to disable those sites. And just as we are seeking to do this with foreign sites, there is nothing to stop this precedence going forward to have other countries disabling our own sites. Sites like YouTube and Facebook that employ tens of thousands of Americans and many others, because we,
thank you,
the shining light of freedom of speech and of intellectual property enforcement have gone down this path and set this precedent. A very
Thank you. This guy talking right now knows what he's talking about.
And one that will ultimately be counterproductive. And I think it's critical,
it's a type of pastry.
To realize that user-generated content from which most of these infringements are derived, while they might be enabled by a technology that also enables legitimate commerce and communications, are not the fault of the technological enabler that creates it. No more than Ford should be held liable for somebody who drives into a building or kills a pedestrian, and no more than a gun company should be liable for a gun that is used in a murder. Happy to
Would the gentleman yield?
I'll be happy to yield.
Please hold that thought about the gun company not being held liable. I think the gentleman's hit on an extremely important point, and I would just like to comment on the gentleman from Virginia, the chair. I think he has somewhat
misunderstood
the likely practical ramifications. This bill will face one of two types of foreign entities. The type that doesn't answer the claim and gets a default judgment, in which case it's really just a prove-up.
And it's true.
A prove-up without a defense. The other is a foreign entity who is willing to come in and fight in court. And if you're willing to come in and fight in court, why shouldn't you have all reasonable defenses, including that one? So I know that the gentleman meant well when he said, well, this wouldn't work. But the practical reality is the sites we're talking about are not going to, for the most part, they're not going to defend. They're going to be default judgments. And the few who come forward, why wouldn't we have them say, look, I have all these legitimate items and so on. Additionally, well, I think I've made my point. I'll seek other time. I yield back to the gentleman.
Yeah, and I'll be seeking some additional time as well. Hopefully somebody will call some.
Does the chair have a question, I guess?
Would you mind?
The question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentleman from
Mr. Chairman, I object. I had sought
SOPA
time on my own.
Dutch. Fine. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Well, the gentleman yield.
I certainly will yield.
Thank you,
gentleman.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman. Again, if I'm getting this correctly,
yeah,
the
sure. I'll just yield to you. No big deal.
Unlike this bill that's kind of
sure. I'll yield to you. I'll yield to you. Okay, we'll both yield to each other. All right, cool.
Was a result of a long process, and it's work. It's relatively
Wouldn't that just cancel out?
This that same concept of you are responsible
Apparently,
for a takedown.
I don't know what goes through their mind. They need to look up yield in the dictionary.
Very reasonable standard to hold foreign infringers to. We hold domestic infringers to.
You both can't stop for each other, because if you do that, then you'll cause a traffic jam.
I'm happy to go back to gentleman.
Cause a deadlock.
God.
I thank the gentleman. Hopefully the chair would have some reasonable response to why this level of common sense prove-up doesn't make sense. It appears as though the idea that a materially non-infringing use is somehow not a good defense. And
this lady actually said that. Her name is Miss Waters. No wonder she's single.
Or
no, she's not single. Sorry,
Mr. Chair. Can you tell me why that shouldn't be a defense? I'd be glad to yield to the chair.
I would simply say to the gentleman that
and they're talking about removing the word offensive from the internet.
Criminal copyright law, willfully is a very high standard of proof, and I don't see the need to provide that standard here with regard to foreign infringers of copyright.
Well, let me understand this for a moment. you don't want to give rights to foreign infringers, but
Here
you
we
don't
go.
want
They
to...
have rights to come in and
I was looking at her and thinking that
defend
too.
themselves in the
You can
case.
see the look in her
The question
eyes.
is,
She's
how
just like,
high a threshold does the U.S. prosecutor have to reach in order to make their case?
I think if I'm correct, this is the private right. This is in fact the plaintiff's trial bar, a group that at least on this side of the aisle, we tend to say, wait a second, we don't want to give them the easy road to collect monies and to do their actions. So I'm trying to understand why you would have a low standard for that. Additionally,
it's not a low standard. It's just not the very high standard.
It's a pretty low threshold. I'd yield to the gentlelady from California.
The question is, and if I'm hearing the chairman correctly, that non-willful infringement should be the cause of action here. Is that your intention?
I think that's what I heard.
Probable cause in the Section 102 action.
So the standard under U.S. copyright law would be preponderance of the evidence, not willfully. I mean, why would we make it harder for U.S. Entities trying to protect intellectual property rights?
We're claiming my time, Mr. Chairman, and not to be offensive, but you already voted down the idea that we'd limit this to U.S. entities. This ain't U.S. entities. It's anybody who wants to come play in our playground. I'd yield to the gentlelady from California.
I think the chairman is confusing intent with the evidentiary standard. They're different. And what I'm hearing him say is that we could have this action would lie even when there wasn't a willful infringement. I think that's a problem. And as I've mentioned, you could end up with a private party taking action based on the affirmative steps to foster when all was said and done, there was no violation, no infringement as the statute is currently crafted. That can't be what our intention is. And I thank the gentleman from California for
I thank the
gentlelady.
I want to hug her right
now. I'm glad to yield again to the gentleman.
Reach the computer and just hug her.
Now is complaining that we've taken domestic sites out of the legislation because we took them out because there are other copyright laws and standards for enforcement of those laws which have a lower standard for proving copyright violations than is called for in this amendment for foreign sites. That's why I oppose the amendment. You're asking for too high a standard. I don't understand why we would have a higher standard to prove copyright infringement with foreign sites with U.S. sites.
Well, I appreciate that, but privacy or piracy of pornography
having a high standard for domestic people to bring this in the courts to seek a remedy against a foreign entity. Understanding, again, I repeat, as a practical matter, as somebody who has defended intellectual property, my own, repeatedly around the world, the fact is the bad guys aren't going to come up at all. You're going to generally get a default judgment. And there your prove-up, even at this high standard, is just to show a pattern. But, Mr. Chairman, if you can't take this one, then once again what we're seeing, and this is a pattern, is there was no interest in compromise. This has been a take it or leave it sort of approach, and I'm frustrated because that's not the history of this committee.
Mountain Dew went against SOPA. I just saw a link to that.
And takes good amendments and even offers secondary amendments if they weren't crafted well enough. Haven't seen that today. I yield back.
Question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from California. All those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Noes have it again.
Vote is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Smith? No. Mr. Smith votes no. Mr. Sensenbrenner? Mr. Coble?
No. That's such a good amendment.
Mr. Gallagly?
Uh-oh. Got a little
Mr. Goodlatte?
ping issue
Mr.
here.
Goodlatte votes no. Mr. Lundgren?
We're making progress?
Mr. Shabbat?
What was this one?
Yes.
Mr. Issa? Yes. Mr. Issa votes yes. Mr. Pence? Mr. Forbes? Mr. King? Mr. King votes no. Mr. Franks? Mr. Gomert?
Did you hear that guy?
I'm too busy resetting the feed because someone's fucking up our bandwidth.
This guy, and you can hear him, he goes, should we really be this busy sitting around for this?
Mr. Marino? Mr. Marino votes no. Mr. Gowdy? Mr. Gowdy votes no.
Hopefully this will pass because
Mr. Ross votes no.
it did before.
Ms. Adams?
Started like right before we started this.
Mr. Quayle? Mr. Quayle votes no. Mr. Amade? Mr. Amade votes no. Mr. Conyers? Mr. Conyers votes no. Mr. Berman? Mr. Nadler? Mr. Nadler votes no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott votes no. Mr. Watt? Mr. Watt votes no. Ms. Lofgren? Ms. Lofgren votes aye.
My IP address is now a website?
What?
Ms. Waters? Ms. Waters votes no.
That's what they were
Cohen?
implying, so that was
Mr.
his
Cohen
response.
votes
What?
no. Mr. Johnson?
Because they called an IP address a
Mr. Johnson
website.
That's not how that works.
Mr. Pierluisi?
No.
Good try,
Mr.
though.
Quigley?
Good try.
Mr. Quigley votes yes. Ms. Chu? Ms. Chu votes no. Mr. Deutsch? Mr. Deutsch votes no. Ms. Sanchez? Ms. Sanchez votes yes.
Okay, so
Mr.
I
Polis?
don't...
Aye.
I don't know why
Polis
this
votes
is such a
aye.
big deal.
Gentleman from Virginia,
Oh, someone
Mr.
voted
Forbes.
aye.
Mr. Forbes votes no.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Mr.
Gentleman
Chapman
from
votes
California, Mr. Lundgren.
no. Mr. Lundgren votes no.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Jordan votes no.
Gentleman from Arizona.
Mr. Franks votes no.
Are there other members who wish to be recorded on this amendment? The gentleman from California, Mr. Berman.
Mr. Berman votes no.
Clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, 7 members voted aye, 24 members voted nay.
Majority having voted against the amendment is not agreed to.
Okay, ping is back down. And?
This bill's got some ways to go. They're in the House. They have to go through the Senate.
Yeah.
And the President. And the
Are there
President
other
can veto
amendments?
it.
The
And
gentleman
Obama
from
was talking about
Ohio?
possibly vetoing it.
Mr. Shabbat, is he prepared
But
to
I
offer an
think
amendment?
the House is above him, and
Clerk will
they can
report
override
amendment
his
number
veto.
22.
Yeah, they can.
22.
I think it takes
or 13
ratio.
Number
2 to 3 or
Amendment to the
3 to
amendment
4
in the
or
nature of
something
a
like that.
substitute to H.R. 3261 offered by Mr. Shabbat of Ohio. Page 35, line 16.
Chairman,
No, there's just, there's like,
amendment will be considered as read.
All
and the
right.
gentleman is recognized
That's
to
fine.
explain the amendment.
Thank you,
There's-
Mr. Chairman.
there
I'll
was
be
this,
brief. This amendment simply provides that service will be proper when
thing
it is
that I,
served on an agent designated by a
I was reading
corporation to
about that
receive
the
service or
government did,
process.
and
The purpose of the amendment
they were
is to
doing a
ensure
controlled
that
fire,
one of the
and it
ways
got
in
out of
which
control because, you
non-infringing
know, the
third
news will
parties
talk
may
about
receive
how windy it
copies of
is.
court orders is through
And they lit the fire
well-established
anyways, and the
legal
wind
channels
moved
for
the
serving
fire around, and it
corporations.
burned down 10
This amendment
homes.
will ensure that a copy of the court
And
order,
so one of the guys
which
who
is
lost
what
his home
triggers
walked
the
up to the
requirement
person
for
who
an
started
entity
the
to
fire
act,
and
gets into the
and
hands
said,
of the
you know,
right
like,
people.
what were you
at the
thinking? I have
entities that
kids.
are
You burned my
gonna be
house down.
required
And
to take
after kind
actions
of getting on
to shut down an infringing
person who lit
site.
the fire, the person turned to me and
This
said,
makes
"Sir,
it clear
you're
to
just
the
a
parties involved,
homeowner. I'm a
excuse me, than
professional."
stating that service
A
is provided
professional
for a
arsonist?
place where an entity
Yeah,
or
you
representative
burned
of that
down
entity
10 homes.
may
You're
be
not a
found.
professional.
For example, this eliminates the
No.
situation where a copy of
Professional
the order
wouldn't
is handed to
have
a
burned down the
company
house.
representative
They would have
who
actually
wouldn't light
made
fire in the window.
a controlled fucking fire. But what the hell do I know, huh?
Chairman.
But that just showed
Will the
what
gentleman
got me
yield?
was
Gentleman
that you're
from Ohio
just
yield?
a
I'd be happy to.
homeowner.
I thank the
Yeah.
gentleman
They don't
for offering
care
this amendment, which
anymore.
I
They
think
really
improves
don't.
the underlying legislation, and I
You
support
just
it.
realized this, but I think they stopped
Well,
caring.
I just started getting into politics.
They
Gentleman
stopped
yield,
caring a long
I
time
too support
ago.
his amendment. He's 2 for 2.
Now it's just getting
Thank you.
worse.
Higher percentage than
Better
anyone
shut
else.
it down there.
Are there other members who
Well,
wish
the-
to be heard on the amendment?
Yeah,
Not
Mr.
all of
Gentleman
them,
yield.
some of them.
The
Like the people
gentleman
here
from
who are like the
from
people who are
Texas,
representing
Mr.
us and
Jackson
saying,
Lee.
no,
Mr.
we
Chap-
can't do this.
Let me
They care.
just inquire.
Yeah,
your explanation again
someone
is to
on
avoid
Reddit,
false service or
I
service
lost
to,
the link, but he said
if
he
you
hopes
will,
that this bill
secondary
passes.
representatives.
That
Can
way
you
there'll be a
just,
full-scale revolution and we'll take
gave the
everyone out of
example
office.
the speech and
it will happen eventually.
Yeah, reclaiming my time. In other words,
if we're actually going to have a sane fucking country,
served,
it will have to
engaged
happen.
It's just making it clear you serve the agent.
There's going to be no other way
corporation
now.
is designated for service.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. I return back whatever time I have.
Okay, if no one else requests time, I'll yield back.
The question is on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. The amendment is agreed to. Are there other amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if I'm going to be up next, my 103 amendment.
I'm looking to see if there are other members who were listed as having amendments before you.
From what I can tell, I'm next in order, but if you
I'm sorry, is this the ISA number 76?
Yes, sir.
Yes. The gentleman is recognized for the purpose of offering an amendment.
Thank you. This clerk will designate.
Someone writes,
the clerk will report
that girl's cute. You know, the one that's doing all of the recordings?
Yeah.
There's a replies, she sure is.
The gentleman from California is recognized to
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then she smiled
this is
when she
somewhat
recorded
similar
the yeses to these
the
amendments.
last
We should
amendment
watch
that
her,
fared
see if she
well but
smiles.
not well enough. The difference here is where we are in the business of protecting U.S. copyrights. It's pretty much that simple. So it requires that the person must be both a U.S. copyright or trademark holder and a U.S. person in 103. Now, again, I beg everyone here to understand this is the private cause of action. So if I can emphasize enough, you're going to sue in U.S. courts. You're going after U.S. persons. You're making a claim. All we're saying, similar to my Open Act, is why in the world wouldn't you be expected to be a U.S. entity with the U.S. copyright? If you are not, then what you're doing is you're suing one direction. You're coming into this process potentially with absolutely no downside. You make a frivolous claim. You make maybe 1 million frivolous claims. You maybe collect some money.
Would the gentleman yield?
I will in just a second. Practically an Internet scam, and you're not vulnerable to anything because you've got no assets here. So, again, it is not an unreasonable. It's expected. Mr. Nadler, I yield.
Yeah, I really don't understand your amendment. You're saying that
what is there not to understand?
In order to bring the suit, you have to be a U.S. citizen and the copyright owner?
No, a U.S. person, which include a U.S. corporation with the copyright.
In order to bring the suit against an alleged infringer.
That's correct. You'd have to have a U.S. presence in order to come into the U.S.
U.S. person meaning someone who's present in the U.S.
Well, no. We use the term specifically. A U.S. corporation would comply. So if you happen to be a U.S.
Let me
person,
ask you this: what are you trying to prevent?
I'm trying to prevent false claims by entities having. You can be a Nigerian-based sham entity, and if we don't have some protection as to who has a right of action,
in a U.S. court.
Yeah, in a U.S. court. And also all we're doing is saying, well, why in the world, when you're going to spend U.S. taxpayers' money to enforce copyrights, that you say, look, it's going to be a U.S. copyright in a U.S. entity.
So you're saying that Nigerian...
I use Nigeria because they're famous for a certain kind of spam.
Whoever. A Nigerian plaintiff who is alleging a copyright infringement in the United States?
Yes.
Should not be able to come into a U.S. court?
With a non-U.S. copyright and without an entity here that holds it. That's correct.
Well, if we did that,
going after a foreign site. Think about this.
But wait a minute. If we did that, wouldn't that lead to foreign non-enforcement of our copyrights?
No, understand. The way this thing, if you leave this out, you open yourself up to, for example, a foreign entity coming into our courts to enforce against another foreign entity and then having our U.S. companies act on behalf, all of which is done at our expense.
Against another U.S., against the foreign, not against the U.S. entity.
Right. This is about foreign entity primarily is the claim of this bill. So,
and therefore, in other words, none of this touches the United States, and therefore it does not open us up to retaliation against enforcement of our copyrights abroad?
Well, yes, that's correct. And that's all we're really looking at is that we've said all along that if this is to become law, let's at least make sure that what we're doing is going after the bad guys on behalf of U.S. entities and U.S. copyrights. It seems so simple that you wonder why it's necessary. If someone wants to show me where it's in the bill and explicit and taken care of, I wouldn't be making this. But we asked and we could not get it. And so we said, well, wait a second here. This is U.S. taxpayer dollars in support of an action mandating that's likely to mandate, with the Justice Department's assistance, all kinds of enforcement. And we're looking and saying, before we spend the money, either the 102 or the 103 portion, this is 103, let's just make sure that we've got a U.S. presence. That's all we're trying to do with this, and that's the reason that we're bringing it up, and now we're bringing it up in a private cause of action because we think it has an even better chance of being accepted by the chair. And I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodland.
Mr. Chairman, this is not at all dissimilar to the amendment the gentleman offered earlier. If you want to think about it, the United States is by far the world leader in intellectual property. We sell it in virtually every country in the world. Copyrighted materials, goods that are trademarked with U.S. trademarks, and so on. So the precedent here that you'd be worried about setting would be that if you went to some other country in the world and said, if they have a law that attempts to enforce their copyright owners' protections in other countries, and you say, well, our goods are being sold in your country too, we want you to protect our goods against foreign sites that are getting into that country's consumers and selling stolen goods. We set the precedent here by saying, well, the United States isn't going to allow that in our country, so why would they allow it in some other country around the world? It's also counter to commitments that the United States has made under existing trade agreements. So it creates a terrible international precedent, and I would strongly oppose it.
Would the gentleman yield?
I would yield.
I appreciate that. I've spent years on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'm trying to, although not the Ways and Means, I'm trying to understand what country would allow a foreigner, let's just say an American, to come into their country and expect them to spend their money against another foreign country's company at their expense without that entity being in some way domestic. If you turn it around, they would laugh at us if we said that they would retaliate. No country is going to enforce against another country's company and then secondary against their own people without a presence and a right.
Well, sure they would. If you got a foreign entity selling goods into a country that are counterfeit, fraudulent, maybe harmful to the citizens of that country, and they're manufactured by a company in that country, they're going to take the same position the United States takes on that. Why wouldn't they be concerned about those goods coming into that country if they're goods that belong to somebody else?
If the gentleman would,
and says that they want to have that protection in that country.
If the gentleman would yield.
Sure.
I would see your point, except in this case, this is the private right of action section of 103. So what we're really saying is, I get to come in, and I get to sue another foreign entity. And my real purpose is not to sue the foreign entity and foreign from that country. My real reason is, in fact, to get enforcement and perhaps not perhaps, but definitely money damages against entities downstream. So I can actually come in and make an allegation against an eBay delivery from the United States into China, and then turn around and get the Chinese government to, in fact, go after U.S. entities that are operating in China. That means it's a
reclaim my time. The gentleman just noted that this is, unlike the gentleman's first amendment, which involved the governmental action, this is the private right of action that the gentleman's talking about now. And U.S. entities go into other countries' courts,